Good morning. It is July 9th, 2021, and online we have Dr. Dave Gardner, Pam Sherratt, Todd Hicks, and the indefatigable Dr. David Shetler. It has been a cool down this week somewhat after the blast of heat we got on Monday, Tuesday for July 4th, and I did predict that Monday or Saturday and Sunday would be nice, and they were. And so hopefully many of you had a big uptick on rounds of golf. And sporting activities at your facilities. We are still behind on the rainfall total for the year in Cleveland by about 3.5 inches. We are forecast, however, storms and rain for the next kind of 7 to 10 days with cooler temperatures. So we may be back into somewhat good living. First up this morning is the lady who loves to kill sports turf in the name of research. Ms. Pamela Sherratt.
Good morning, everybody. So first of all, I just wanted to introduce our new turfgrass facility manager, and that is Brandon Stith. Brandon is actually a graduate of the Ohio State program. He was previous to this, he was the assistant superintendent at the golf club, and I believe he served for 6 years in the Air National Guard. So he was very involved in the turf club when he was a student, and just a great team player. So we're really excited to welcome Brandon in that role and work with him to get our turfgrass facility the best it can be and to have a fantastic field day this year. So moving on from that, I just wanted to talk really briefly about renovation, sports turf renovation. I saw something on Twitter yesterday about, the ideal time to renovate is in the fall. And I think we constantly say that in our classes and everything else, but sports turf is somewhat unique because it's a year-round renovation. The only months I know that sports turf managers aren't renovating their fields is possibly December and January. With lacrosse starting in February, they hit the ground running in February, removing the snow and getting fields ready for early play. And so these fields are in a constant state of renovation. So I wouldn't want any sports turf manager out there to think that if they see bare soil in July, that they can't deal with it till August, because let's all just come to the conclusion that we renovate sports fields year round. All I would say is be careful with previous control measures. Dr. Gardner talks about weed control, and some of those weed control products that we put out can inhibit seed germination. So be careful with that. Seedbed preparation is key. There's a picture here at the bottom right showing dormant rough bluegrass, but this could be dead. This could be dead grasses. This could be dead broadleaf weeds that were sprayed. Anytime we have organic material like this on the soil, it's really difficult for that seed to germinate. It needs really good seed soil contact. So this time of year, I'm always a bit sketchy about saying to scarify or do anything mechanical to remove that, because it's so hot and the cool season grasses are so stressed. But if you can do that at times of the year, times of the day where it's a little bit cooler, and especially you could do this on fields that are irrigated, it's important to get that organic material out of there if you're going to try and get seed established. Time it with rains. Anytime we can put out seed or fertilizer with a rain event, it seems to offer great benefits. Obviously, timing your control products with rain will depend on the label, the control product that you're using, but certainly seed and fertilizer timed with rain events can also be a great benefit. There's lots of tools and products available. We've got chemical products now that can control weeds at the same time that you seed. We've got mechanical operations like phrase mowing that can control whole vegetation to a laser grade. We've got coated seeds, we've got treated seeds to try and prevent some diseases at seeding. And that leads me into my nearly last slide. I will be talking about coated seeds and treated seeds and summer renovation at the field day on August 4th. So I hope you guys can make that. And then my final point, Dr. Nangle, is those of you that are, managing golf courses, grounds, park and rec facilities, if you have bird feeders hanging, feeding the birds, which we all like to do, even at home, the wildlife group at Ohio State, led by Marnie Tichenall, now are asking, just take those feeders down. I know there was some recommendations earlier to take them down and clean them with a 10% bleach solution, because we have this mysterious bird illness that's killing birds in the Midwest and in central Ohio, around Ohio. the message that came out 2 days ago from this group was like, just take them down until we know what's going on. We don't want birds congregating right now and giving this illness to each other. So if you're a bird lover like I am, take your bird feeders down and follow this website. ODNR have also created a brand new website to deal with this issue. So either follow ODNR's advice or come on and follow the guys from Ohio State. And I'm sure once they figure out what's going on, they'll let us know. Okay, so I have to jump off and go and work on curriculum development. Woohoo! But I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I'll see everybody next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. And all the turkey hunters are like, I ain't taking no feeder down. Okay, next up is Todd Hicks with a disease update.
Thanks, Ed. Morning, everybody. Disease-wise, so far this year, for sick people like me that love to see disease, it's been really mild and quite lackluster. Dollar spots kind of nibbled at people's heels, but it's not been the problem we normally see here at the Turf Center. We probably only have about a third of the pressure we normally are used to this time of year. Brown patch and Pythium reared their heads during those hot spells, mostly in high cut home lawn situations. And as soon as it cooled off, like Ed said, everything shuts back down. So we're getting into this feast and famine for disease. And so we're not seeing the pressure, the long pressure that we normally would see. That may change as the summer goes on if the heat comes and stays. What I am seeing coming in diagnostic wise, two things. One, turf going off color, it just doesn't look healthy and so forth. It tends to be drought. People are looking at these cooler temperatures and thinking we're good to go. We don't have to water as much, but remember, it's the wind you got to pay attention to. Even on these cooler days, we're seeing quite strong winds come through. The rain that they keep forecasting doesn't turn out to be rain, but it does have wind, and that'll dry you out quicker than anything. So I'm seeing a lot of dry turf. I'm seeing a lot of POA that is going off color, either from overstress I think the POA is just having a hard time. It got really warm early. POA got a really strong start and grew really quickly. And then we went into this schizoid weather where it snowed, it got hot, it got cool, and it snowed again, and some weird stuff. So I think the POA, as long as you punch it, open it up, get some air down to those roots, release some of the stress, it seems to snap back out of that. Maybe watch how much PGRs you're putting on with all the cool weather. But other than that, disease-wise, really a lackluster year so far. But look out for the end of July and what we have in store for us in August. That's it.
Yeah, I will say, Todd, one thing I noticed lately on where we've a lot of our trials at Hawk's Nest, a lot of fearing popping up. Now, I know that's tied to dry weather, right? I mean, a lot of that's
it's tied to the heat and tied to that warm weather. I went out this morning and most of it's gone, but a lot more than normal, Ed. That's correct. And most of that's from drying out. I think, again, we have a false sense of what our soils are like when the weather's cool. People associate cool weather with great growing conditions, and it usually is, as long as the water's there. If it's windy, you get those high winds coming across, those top 2-3 inches are drying out a lot quicker than most of us are expecting.
Awesome. Good stuff, Todd. Thank you. Up next is Dave Gardner, and he likes to kill weeds in the name of research.
All right. Good morning, everybody. And so, yes, today I'm going to talk a little bit about killing weeds, specifically grasses, because we are at about that time of year that crabgrass is beginning to tiller and rapidly increase in its coverage of the ground. And so the herbicides that we typically use, phenoxaprop, quinclorac, mesotrione, or topramazone, those are your choices for post-emergence control of crabgrass. Quinclorac and topramazone are maybe a little bit more often used, as they tend to be a little bit more active on tillering crabgrass. It's not to say that you can't get good control with the others, it's just sometimes it's a little less consistent. With quinclorac, it's better to wait for the crabgrass to be done attempting to set seed. I think, most of the quinclorac applications tend to go out after July 20th. Topramazone's maybe a little bit less sensitive to, the growth stage of the grass. But for example, topramazone marketed as Pilex, here's what that looks like after you make a couple of applications. So here I applied July 16th and August 6th and got pretty good control all by itself. Now that said, topramazone is kind of like mesotrione in that it turns the crabgrass white, right? It's a bleacher. So it makes the crabgrass more visible instead of less visible after you treat it, which a lot of people don't like that. So if you mix topramazone with quinclorac, a half a rate of each, you can get really good control. In this trial, I did that plus a little bit of ammonium sulfate to, increase the color of the turf a little bit. And I did get some bleaching, but overall it was not bad. And, sometimes 2 applications are necessary, but, sometimes you can get away with just 1 application. But again, half a rate of quinclorac, a half a rate of topramazone on crabgrass at this time of year should give you pretty good post-emergence control. Now, for the other tropical grasses that we're seeing now, so things like goosegrass, completely different seed head on it. So, when in doubt with the morphology, let it go to seed so that you can see what the seed head looks like. It's got multiple florets per spikelet instead of individual florets like crabgrass does, so completely different appearance. Or if you have something like Johnson grass, this kind of almost looks like baby corn when it's growing out of turf, and it's got a really weird seed head on it also. And then field paspalum. These are the other tropical species that you might see. Now, for both field paspalum and Johnson grass, those are perennials. You could actually have treated these in May. They were considerably further along because they reestablished vegetatively each year rather than coming from seed. But if you see these now and you want to get rid of them, know that the very popular herbicide quinclorac that we use for crabgrass control has really not a lot of activity on any of those 3 grasses I just mentioned, goosegrass or field paspalum or Johnson grass. In those cases, if you have those 3 grassy weeds, then either phenoxaprop or topramazone are going to be your better options. Okay, so it's all about properly identifying the grass using the seed head and the vegetative morphology. But this is basically the time of year to get out there and start doing post-emergence control of our tropical grasses as needed. Here's field paspalum being controlled with Pilex. Again, you can get really good activity. The one thing that I would say is that at this time of year, if you make this application, you might get good control of the top growth, but all of the things that make that grass a perennial are going to probably stay below ground. So if you go back in May and you see the field paspalum attempting to reemerge, then go ahead and hit it with topramazone again at that time of year. All right, Ed, that's what I've got.
Thank you, sir. Last but not least, Dr. Dave Shetler.
I'm going to ask Dave a question. Yesterday, one of the popular talk shows in the morning had their garden expert there, and he was pointing out that if you wanted an organic weed control, that there was these strong vinegars out there. And he said that are completely eliminate your weeds. And what would be your comment on that? Because I know our lawn care folks are probably going to get that same question from their customers.
Technically, those strong vinegars will completely control the weeds, kind of. Well, I mean, it's a contact herbicide. So 1, it's non-selective, and 2, if it's a perennial weed like a dandelion or, like white clover, for example, you'd have to do multiple applications. There would be great harm to the grass you grow as well. So there are a couple of, for post-emergent broadleaf control, there's perhaps a better option, which is chelated iron, and there are homeowner formulations of chelated iron available. All of them seem to be 26.52% of exactly the same kind of chelated iron. So it's like there's many different brands, but it's all coming from the same manufacturer. But that product works remarkably well on a range of broadleaf weeds, and actually a lot of the summer annuals that we have trouble with our synthetic compounds with, so like spurge, knotweed, we can have some real problems trying to control those posts. But the chelated iron actually works pretty well for those. Now, if it's something like dandelion or white clover, you probably are going to have to hit it 3 times 3 weeks apart to get more permanent control. But that's probably a better option for selective control of broadleaf weeds. Post-emergence for crabgrass, we still really don't have anything organic. There's the pre-option with the corn gluten meal, but yeah, the vinegar, that's a rough one. It's like it's there, yeah, but it's the selectivity is the issue with that one.
Yeah, I just wanted that covered in case some of our clientele here get that question in there. In the bug world, we're kind of at that junction here between generations, but as I mentioned last week, I've had several of the lawn care companies scattered across the state that have said they've detected the bill bug damage from the spring generation. And again, I caution that if you have not applied a white grub treatment to those particular lawns, you could have a second generation of those bill bugs. And so you might want to consider that. Also, you need to evaluate how much damage the bill bugs did because they actually will kill the turf. And so you may need to rethink about a reseeding of those damaged lawns later on. This is happening also out in the sport fields. When it comes to the white grubs, right now the Japanese beetles are either bust or gang busting. And so if you happen to be in an area where you're not seeing any Japanese beetles, great, wonderful. But there are some hot spots again. They seem to be up in the sort of Akron, Canton, Cleveland triangle, and over in the Dayton and south of Dayton areas. We've got some hot spots for those. I have yet to see my first Japanese beetle on my Sentinel rose plant. I planted a rose plant in my front yard. My wife thinks it was for her, but it was a yellow species that is really attractive to Japanese beetles, and I've yet to see a Japanese beetle on those. The other thing we have to remember, we did have that late freeze in May. And I think that has delayed the emergence of some of these grubs. So just because we're not seeing them right now doesn't mean that they're not out there. And with the recent rains, even though we're below normal for the year, the topsoil inch or so is moist. And that means that if we do have white grubs laying eggs in that top inch of the soil, those eggs are going to hydrate and continue their development. And so we could have some patchy grub problems across the state later on in the year. The last thing that I'm hearing from some of the golf course superintendents is that they are experiencing the second generation of black cutworms right now. So if you're seeing some of those black cutworm pock marks out on your greens and tees, if you didn't treat with a celiprin early in the season to get that season-long control of the caterpillars in those tees and greens, the quick answer is, again, a pyrethroid. Pick whatever pyrethroid you can find. The cheapest one, generic, should work just fine to knock out those caterpillars quickly. If you are dealing with cutworm, remember to treat at least 2 boom widths out from the green and tee surfaces so that you don't have larger cutworms that weren't treated moving onto your greens after you've treated. And so we usually recommend that perimeter treatment to keep any of the larger cutworms at nighttime from moving back in onto the treated surfaces after the residues of that pyrethroid have dissipated. That's all I've got, Ed. Back to you.
Thanks, Dave. One other quick follow-up, Dave Gardner. We did have a question on last week's Turf Team Times tied to trying to remove rough bluegrass and timing of applications. Obviously, the answer written was it depends, but can you give us some further clarification on that before we wrap this up?
Well, the difficult thing with controlling rough bluegrass is that you're probably wanting to get rid of it because it's dormant right now. But dormant grasses tend to not absorb herbicide particularly well. So unfortunately, you have to wait for the rough bluegrass to recover sufficiently so that it can take up herbicide that will then kill it. Then you can go ahead and renovate. So it's difficult to predict when exactly that will be. But basically, if you have those areas of rough bluegrass they look like they're dead because of a disease or an insect, but it's actually just dormant and you see living stolons, you have to wait for those to reemerge, produce new shoots that can then be treated with the herbicide, and then you can go ahead and renovate.
So he's sidestepped and never gave a direct answer again, but that's okay, Dave.
Well, it depends on where you are in the state. If
Yeah, oh yeah, it depends.
I could see a scenario where it would like get hot and then the rough bluegrass would magically recover. But if you're in the southern part of the state, it might be, laid waste until, October or something like that.
Yeah, so it is one of those. A couple other things, just Pam did mention OTF Field Day. Olka and OTF Field Days are 4th and 5th of August. The OTF golf outing is October 11th, Walnut Grove down in Dayton. The OSU ATI golf outing is at Columbia Hills on September 27th at Columbia Hills in Medina, just south of Cleveland. So get out, get involved, and get into your foundations or associations, because the more you get involved, the more they are active with on your behalf and with us. So with that, I will say thank you, folks. We're almost halfway through the 100 days, and we will talk to you all next week.